The rig test for the Dragon, or rig demonstration, rather. So we have a global controller with a large number of attributes, some of them custom. You can, of course, translate and rotate the rig appropriately. Say you need to fly around, you're just going to need to move through 3D space and rotate as a whole. There is scaling, so that he appropriately is scaled for the project, or if, in case you need him to be larger or smaller for a given shot. I'm going to reset these values so that he's back on the base, so you have a frame of reference. The global controller also includes the IK-FK control for the neck, which is an enumeration. When you switch back and forth, this turns on and off the controller displaying the IK-FK neck value so that you know what mode you're in, even if you aren't actively selecting the global controller. In order to allow an animator to simulate breathing, he has rib controls. There is a spine twist for some very subtle changes. The jaw open and close is controlled from the global controller as well. You can open and close his mouth. Pretty good range of motion. There is some secondary animation baked into this using set-driven keys. As the mouth opens, his spines actually expand outwards, giving him a slightly wider, more menacing head. The wings can be spread or collapsed from the global controller as well as their own controls. So if he's going to dive, you can make him small or pop his wings out. Like I said, these have a spread attribute. They can be controlled independently. The wings don't have to be mirrors of each other. The global controller does override it, though, if you make a change there. There is also a tail spread for the tail membrane at the back of the dragon. You can have his tail, manipulated from there. Okay, so there are eye controls. You'll notice that the rotate and scale are locked on a large number of these controls. Anything that isn't something the animator needs to access has been locked and hidden, and that is to prevent them from doing things that cause the rig to crash or break, or because that function simply isn't needed because it's not related to the constraint type. And in this case, it's a name constraint, so rotating or scaling doesn't do anything, at least not the type I needed to use. If you had an up vector, then rotation could affect it, but this is just based on the dragon's rotation. In order to get it to allow the eyeballs to rotate with the dragon, you'll notice his pupils are still in his head instead of facing upward based on the world vector. I needed to make it independent of that. What that means is that this controller will move the dragon's eyeballs to look at things. This is very standard. Most rigs have this. I would assume all rigs, honestly, that had eyeballs. The eyes can also be moved independently. So this eyeball can be looking down, and this eyeball can be looking up or out. So our dragon is effectively a chameleon, should you so desire. Just going to reset these back to 0 real quickly. Alright, so let's go over the IK-FK neck. So it's currently in IK mode. You can tell because, or inverse kinematics mode, because you have an arrow that allows you to control that. This drives a node at the end of a curve, which is being used to control the bones of the neck. The result is a fairly sinuous, kind of snake-like, menacing neck. As long as the curve is pulled to the end, you get a relatively smooth neck. If you push it in, you can get some very square or pinched things going on. So for any animators who are looking at this, try to keep things a little bit more fluid and natural like that. There's a twist function built in. If you rotate this control, it affects the curve twist for the neck. So you get some nice curvature twisting going on there. The head should be controlled independently, even in this mode. If you rotate this, it will pull the curve, so you may or may not want that to happen. So yeah, if we wanted to look down at somebody we were going to eat, virtually no time at all, we have the dragon getting ready to devour. Just kind of snack time. So speaking of snack time, we've got tongue controls. I'm going to zero this out so that it's a little easier to see what's going on there. Alright, so the tongue is controlled with spline IK, and so you grab these curves, which are parented to each other. Once again, this is a movement-based control, so it's a curve driving the rig. Take these on out here. We can position them, kind of imagining there's a tongue going through them already. And then on this last controller, we have a stretch node, which actually mimics the way your tongue works in real life. Your tongue doesn't stretch uniformly back and forth in your mouth. It moves, the whole muscle moves it in and out of your throat. So that's what this does. It moves the whole tongue. And you can stretch way beyond what you need to, but I would suggest stopping wherever you have your controllers, because that's how the curve is being described. And the result is that you have pretty solid control. You can keep his tongue where you need it to, move it around in his mouth. You can use it for speech, just for making strange, crazy faces. It's pretty flexible. I'm happy with how it turned out. So, right, FK mode. So the neck can be handled FK. If you go back to the global controller, it's an enumerated control, so there's only the two options. And now the IK controller is gone, you have just the FK controls, which are all rotation because you're rotating the neck. It doesn't allow squash and stretch. So we have some head controls, and you can grab these and move a bunch of them at once if you so desire. And his neck will move along, similar to before, but of course you have the fine control that comes with FK. So if I wanted to do some very strange manipulations of his neck, I could. So now he's kind of corkscrewing through space if you say you wanted to have him coil up and then strike that way instead of like a snake. And the head control is unchanged, but you lose the twisting action. You'd have to twist everything with the IK mode. That also being said, if you switch back, you are controlled by IK, you lose the FK animation you did. So you need to pick one or the other if you're working with it. Alright, so we have, this brings us down to the shoulder controls. This got control over a whole bunch of bones. Everything's interconnected when you move the shoulder. It's kind of like having a second root node. Because of the way quadrupedal dragons are linked, they have this extra set of arm bones and anatomy going on that just isn't found in nature. And the result of that is that you have basically two root nodes. You have a shoulder root and the hip root. So the shoulders can, of course, be moved around. You can position the head however you want and then move the shoulders independently so as not to lose your head animation. Little adjustments. They can, of course, rotate. Can collapse. Probably wouldn't do that. Alright, so we have independent controls for the what I'm going to call the arms. So they can be brought up and down if you need them to be. Or you can control, of course, the feet, leaving those where they are. So shoulder controls connect to everything around them. You also have an independent control for the wing, what would be the clavicle of the wing. And this, of course, moves in all axis. It's not rotation enabled because we're using an IK handle, IKRP solver for the wing down here, and that is what is driving the angles of those bones. All right, so the feet have a wide variety of controls here, and it's mostly because I give you full control over all of the fingers and toes. If we take our foot, we can, of course, move it through IK space, or move it through the 3D space using an IK solver. This is an IKRP solver, which means that we have a rotate plane pointing the direction that we want the IK in. So say we move our hand out here, but we want them to kind of duck walk in a little. We can grab the knee control and we can move the actual swiveling of the limb. And that's the case for all of these. They all, of course, do this. So we have some squashing going on here. You'll see the bicep, when you go straight up, it's weighted so that it doesn't crush super early, but if you get close, you know, your biceps hit you in the forearms. That's just what happens, especially when you are as muscular as this particular individual. The back legs function the same. They paw at the earth, and these can, of course, rotate as well if you need them to. And there's a nice little stretch there of the tendons. Calf looks good. We've got these large claws here in the back, but we also have a whole set of finger controls. So we've got our foot, and we can curl our fingers, including the thumb. I would suggest animating the thumb independently. Its value almost never needs to be as high as the other ones because it's a much smaller bone. These can also be spread. I'll show you on this guy because it's not changed yet. Okay, so you can spread this in and out really tight like you were running, spread if you're going to grasp something, and the thumb can, of course, spread as well, but I made it independent from the other fingers. But you can splay the fingers out quite easily. So say you wanted to grab or pick up a hapless victim, I suppose. We're going to make this dragon the good old kind of scary kind. So you go down there and you grab the curls and you make a foot. Well, now we have some interpenetration problems happening, but that's not a problem because we just take our spread, move the toes apart a little bit, and we have a twist for each of our fingers. So we can move these away from each other, stop the interpenetration problems, and now you have a set of claws that can be used to grab things and pick stuff up. I think it looks pretty good. Tendons are still stretched. You can, of course, still rotate everything if you need to. So there, got a classic eagle picking up something kind of pose going on there. Kind of bird wings, or bird legs rather, in the back. We have a roll. This works on all the feet as well. So the foot roll is using set-driven keys. You can tilt the foot up, down on the ball of the foot, or roll back. I think this looks really good on the hands too. So up and up on the ball of the foot, and then pushing off. So if you were doing a run animation, you could very easily roll the foot however you needed to. We have tail controls. Okay, so the tail is another IK spline. It's done the same way as the tongue. but with a bit more control going on. It's a much larger part of the dragon, and I thought deserved more attention. So you can move these around in 3D space to get a pose going. So let's say our dragon was flying, since they do that a lot, and you wanted to get some dynamic posing going on in this tail. So we have all these curves, or the single curve rather, driven by these controllers, and it didn't take very long at all, and you have the beginning of a pretty dynamic pose. You can get it to move around quite quickly, quite easily. You can get loops going on this. Say it's over here on different frames. When he goes back and forth, it's pretty quick. You may notice that there's another controller here that looks different than the rest of them. And it is locked. It is parented to this, so that when you move around this controller, it keeps the special controller near the part of the tail that's relevant. And what this will do is it will give you independent spread of the membrane. You can go way beyond what I would recommend here. Stay much more in line. This will again override this. If you take the tail spread and you adjust it, and you already have animation on this special controller here, you will lose it. There's also an up-down, so the tail can pinch up or pinch down. So you wanted to scoop something, like attack or grab something, you could just kind of tuck the tail under, grab these spikes here, and there you go. You've got a little basket if you wanted to like catch a fish or scoop up a hapless villager. You can do that with the tail. And you'll see that happened in the short as well. I'm going to put these back to 0 and get these a little bit more in line just so you can see this next bit here. Okay, so the tail has a twist. From a special controller, you can just grab the tail and twist it. So the whole tail can corkscrew as many times as you need it to, get the animation that you require. Again, get some pretty dynamic turns going on. You get some kind of cues to the audience. Oh, he's about to turn, do a shot of the tail, making a small change, and then bang, the whole rest of the dragon turns as a result. There is also a stretch mechanic. So the tail can be shrunk down in the event that you wanted to change. This is one of the only parts of the dragon where you can change the way it actually looks. So you could do a squash and stretch, like he bumps into something, or maybe your dragon doesn't need to have such a long tail in your show. You need it to be smaller for a specific shot, or to make it look the way you need it in a given place. Or I wanted to show this off more, and you don't have to reanimate it all. Save yourself the time. Bang, it's right there. You can also make the tail substantially longer. Say you were going with a more Asian theme, they typically have very long tails on their dragons. You could do that, and these controls, of course, still function no matter how long or short the tail is, because it's being driven by a curve that you can just move the way you need to with this spline IK. And it will, of course, still offer you the special options. You can still twist the tail even when it's scaled, and there's no collapsing or problems there. And that brings us to the thing we've been waiting for, which is the wings. The wings are the most complicated and, I would say, trying portion of this rig. We have an IK RP solver done the same way as the hands, because basically wings are another set of hands. That's kind of what they are. In the real world, bat wings are just hands. I mean, that's how the evolution of the bat worked. So these are finger bones, and they're labeled as such. The thumb is typically called an alar claw in bats and like pterodactyls and such. But okay, so the way the rig works, you have an IK solver. You can move this, and it will inform the limbs where they need to go, or limb where it needs to go. Now, you may notice that we're having some pinching here. That is just a problem that exists. It's not perfect, could be improved. This is the RP part of the solver, the rotate plane. you can change the angle of the wing very easily, how you need it to be. And there is a rotate on the wrist. So say you wanted it to be planed out, or maybe you wanted to scoop under. Say you were pulling up the dragon really short. You could go to put the brakes on, grab the curl functions, and you now have a curled wing in no time. Zero that out, it's a little bit sharp. Okay, so we have this wing right away that curls in, and of course it works on the other side. So we can position our dragon very quickly into a pose, looks like flight, and these will of course go the other way. Oh, not what I meant to do, sorry. So we can of course go the other way as well, so you wanted something really dynamic. What did I just do? Alright, well, say you wanted to grab these, turn on auto keying really quickly, and bring the wing up for our flap. Don't forget the RP solver. You could actually get the wing to bend up, or wing bend down. Very easy, quick controls. It's not impossible to break. The membrane is so huge that if you elect to drag it into the body, it'll shove into it and push. But if you move them forward, you can kind of babysit it as the animator to make sure that things are as they should be. So it requires some babysitting, but it's not completely over the top. Now this right here, what you see going on, is we have two controllers here. Why two controllers on this part of the wing? So this one controls the rotate plane solver. It changes the pull vector of the IK handle, which is the direction that the triangle points, because it's just a triangle of bones. And this one is a secondary controller, and it controls a set of bones in the wing here. So the wing as a whole doesn't need to be moved all of the time. Sometimes you just need to move a part of it. And it'll go this way as well. Move it laterally. So say we're up here, but it also has these other two functions. It has wing flap scrunch, so this scrunches or opens up the wing, so it can be smaller if you want that going on, or if you need to get the membrane a little bit more under control, or bigger if you need to get that big billowy wing going on, or if you want to affect your shadow. And there is a twist, so you can actually twist the whole membrane, gives you some more finite control there. And the alar claw is like the other fingers. It can be curled in either direction, and it has a twist, so you can rotate it just like a thumb. So you wanted to hold on to something, and you can go up and down with it. So you can use it to climb something or grab onto something pretty well. I might have over-rotated that a little. So yeah, it's just another finger on the hand. It just doesn't happen to have a giant wing membrane attached to it. And this is, of course, still driving the IK chain, so no matter where you put it, you can move it. You could expand the wing if you wanted him to be a little bit more beefy. Big, giant shoulders. I don't think it looks very good, though. I'm pretty happy with the way the model turned out. There are some interpenetration issues. If you kind of see we have double membrane here, that's something that could be fixed. But the membrane does follow nicely. It was not the case before. And you'll see we have big lats here that move. You can move this a bit. Still allows all the rotation. Everything works on top of each other. it's always important. A little bit of babysitting on this to get these, not the direction I wanted. There we go. So while the wings are complicated and there's a lot to them, they do work pretty well. The membranes follow. There's controllers to allow you to make the adjustments that you need when you need them to flatten. Like say you didn't want that, you want to flatten things out. You can do that. I think the Dragon works really well, and that's pretty much all I've got as far as the rig goes.